When Sammy Davis Jr. invited Muhammad Ali on his television show in 1968, what happened shocked America and nearly destroyed both their careers forever. It was a cold February evening in 1968, and Sammy Davis Jr. was about to make the most controversial decision of his entertainment career. As he sat in his dressing room at NBC Studios, preparing to tape the Sammy Davis Jr. show, he was holding a phone and about to make a call that would change everything. On the other end would be Muhammad Ali, the most hated man in America, stripped of his boxing titles, banned from the sport, and facing 5 years in prison for refusing to fight in Vietnam. What Sammy was about to do had never been attempted before. No major television network had given Ali a platform since his famous declaration, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong." The boxing champion had become a pariah, abandoned by sponsors, banned from arenas, and treated as a traitor by mainstream America. But Sammy Davis Jr. was about to risk his own career to give Ali something no one else would admire, a chance to tell his story. The decision didn't come easily. Sammy's variety show was one of the few programs on network television hosted by a black entertainer. It represented a breakthrough that had taken decades to achieve. The show featured top musical guests, comedy sketches, and Sammy's incredible performances. It was pulling decent ratings and proving that a black host could succeed in prime-time television. But that success came with enormous pressure. Sammy was constantly aware that he wasn't just representing himself. He was representing the possibility of black entertainers in mainstream media. Every guest choice, every joke, every song was scrutinized, not just as entertainment, but as a statement about what kind of black performer America would accept. The idea to invite Ali came from an unexpected source. Sammy had been having lunch with Harry Belafonte, the calypso singer and civil rights activist who had been pushing Sammy to use his platform more boldly for social change. "You've got something most of us don't have, Sam," Belafonte had said. "You've got a television show. You've got access to America's living rooms every week. What are you going to do with that power?" Sammy had always been more careful than Belafonte when it came to politics. His approach to civil rights was to prove black excellence through entertainment, to win over hearts and minds by being so talented that people couldn't ignore him. But Belafonte was challenging him to do more. "There's a young man out there who's being crucified for standing up for his principles," Belafonte continued. "Muhammad Ali is being destroyed, not because he can't fight, but because he won't fight a war he doesn't believe in. Every television door is closed to him, every platform is denied. But you could change that." The suggestion hit Sammy like a physical blow. Inviting Ali onto his show would be the most politically charged decision he had ever made. Ali wasn't just controversial, he was radioactive. Politicians called him a coward and a traitor. Sports commentators said he had disgraced boxing. Many Americans viewed his refusal to be inducted into the army as an act of unpatriotic cowardice. But Sammy also knew something else about Ali. Behind the bombastic public persona was a young man of deep conviction who was paying an enormous price for his beliefs. Ali had given up millions of dollars, the prime years of his athletic career, and his public reputation to stand by his principles. That kind of courage deserved respect, even from those who disagreed with his position. For weeks after his conversation with Belafonte, Sammy wrestled with the decision. He discussed it with his wife Altovise, with Frank Sinatra, with his managers and publicists. The responses were universally negative. "Sam, this could end everything," his manager warned. "Your show, your Vegas bookings, your recording contract. Ali is poison right now." Touching him could destroy 20 years of building your career. Frank Sinatra, usually supportive of Sammy's decisions, was equally concerned. "I understand wanting to help the kid," Sinatra said, referring to Ali. "But you've got to think about what this could cost you. And not just you. What about all the other black entertainers who are counting on your success to open doors for them?" Even Untold, who admired Sammy's commitment to civil rights, was worried. "I support whatever you decide," she told him. "But I want you to understand what we might be giving up." The pressure intensified when word began to leak that Sammy was considering having Ali as a guest. NBC executives called emergency meetings. Sponsors threatened to pull their advertising. The network received hundreds of angry phone calls from viewers promising to boycott not just Sammy's show, but the entire network if Ali appeared. One NBC executive put it bluntly to Sammy, "If you do this, it might be the last show you ever host on network television." But something had been growing in Sammy's mind since his conversation with Belafonte. He kept thinking about his own journey as a black entertainer, about all the doors that had been slammed in his face, all the venues that had refused to book him, all the times he had been told he wasn't welcome. He thought about how he had overcome those barriers through talent, persistence, and the support of people who believed in him when others didn't. Muhammad Ali was facing the same kind of rejection, but for different reasons. He wasn't being punished for his race or his talent. He was being punished for his conscience. And that, Sammy realized, was something he couldn't ignore. The decision crystallized for him during a particularly difficult week in February 1968. The Tet Offensive had just shocked America with the realization that the Vietnam War was far from over. Martin Luther King Jr. was facing criticism for his own anti-war stance. The civil rights movement was fracturing over questions of violence versus non-violence, integration versus black power. In this charged atmosphere, Sammy realized that staying neutral wasn't actually neutral at all. By refusing to give Ali a platform, he would be taking a side, the side of those who believed that questioning the war was unpatriotic, that standing on principle was worth less than keeping sponsors happy. "I've spent my whole career trying to prove I belong in America," Sammy told Untold the night he made his final decision. "Maybe it's time I proved that America belongs to people who have the courage to stand up for what they believe." The phone call to Ali was brief, but emotional. When Sammy explained what he wanted to do, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Man," Ali finally said, his voice thick with emotion, "you know what this could cost you?" "I know," Sammy replied. "But I also know what it costs to stay silent when someone needs your help." "Why?" Ali asked. "Why would you risk everything for me?" Sammy thought for a moment. "Because 20 years ago, when nobody would give me a chance, Frank Sinatra did. He put his own career on the line to help me when I needed it most. Maybe it's time I did the same for someone else." The announcement that Muhammad Ali would appear on the Sammy Davis Jr. show created a media firestorm. Newspapers across the country ran editorials condemning NBC for giving a platform to someone they called a draft dodger and a traitor. Veterans groups organized protests. Conservative politicians demanded that the FCC investigate the network. But something else happened that surprised everyone. Letters and telegrams began pouring in from viewers who supported Sammy's decision. Young people, in particular, praised him for having the courage to present different viewpoints. Civil rights leaders who had previously criticized Sammy for being too accommodating suddenly hailed him as a hero. The show was taped on February 28, 1968, in front of a studio audience that was noticeably tense. NBC had increased security, fearing demonstrations or worse. Many of the regular audience members had been replaced by network employees and carefully screened guests. When Ali walked onto the stage, the audience reaction was mixed. Some applause, some boos, mostly uncertain silence. He looked different from the bombastic fighter America was used to seeing. He was thinner. Having been out of the ring for nearly a year, he was dressed conservatively in a dark suit. Most importantly, he was clearly nervous about being on television in this context. Sammy's interview with Ali was masterful. Instead of avoiding the controversial subjects, he addressed them directly but with nuance and intelligence. He asked Ali about his religious beliefs, his opposition to the war, his willingness to go to prison for his principles. But he also asked about Ali's childhood, his dreams, his hopes for the future. What emerged was a portrait of a young man. Ali was only 26, who had made an incredibly difficult decision based on his deepest convictions. Ali explained that his opposition to the war wasn't based on cowardice, but on his religious beliefs as a Muslim. He spoke about growing up poor in Louisville, about how boxing had given him a way out of poverty, and about how painful it was to lose everything he had worked for. "I could have taken the easy way," Ali said at one point in the interview. "I could have gone into the army, done my service, maybe got assigned to some safe job somewhere. But that would have meant betraying everything I believe in. I'd rather lose everything I have than lose my soul." Sammy pushed back respectfully, asking about the soldiers fighting in Vietnam, about Ali's responsibilities as a role model, about whether there were ways to protest the war without refusing military service. The conversation was serious, thoughtful, and completely unlike anything that had been seen on television. But the most powerful moment came when Sammy asked Ali about the personal cost of his decision. "I know something about facing rejection," Sammy said. "I know what it feels like to be told you don't belong, to have doors slammed in your face. But you chose this. You could have avoided all of this. Do you ever regret your decision?" Ali was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Davis," he finally said, "you've been fighting for respect and recognition your whole life. You've earned your place through your talent and your determination. I respect that, but some battles aren't about earning a place at the table. Some battles are about whether the table itself is right or wrong." The interview ran for nearly 20 minutes, an eternity on television, but the audience, both in the studio and at home, was riveted. Here was a side of Muhammad Ali that few Americans had ever seen: thoughtful, vulnerable, principled, but also human and relatable. When the show aired 2 weeks later, the ratings were enormous, the highest the Sammy Davis Jr. show had ever achieved. But the reaction was as polarized as expected. Conservative viewers and critics were furious, calling for boycotts and demanding that the show be cancelled. Liberal viewers and young people praised Sammy for his courage and vision. The real test came in the days and weeks following the broadcast. Several major sponsors did pull their advertising from the show. Some Vegas venues cancelled upcoming bookings for Sammy, citing security concerns. The hate mail was vicious and sometimes threatening. But other things happened too. Sammy received letters from Vietnam veterans who thanked him for presenting a different perspective on the war. Young black activists who had previously criticized him for being too mainstream suddenly embraced him as a hero. Most importantly, the show's ratings remained strong, suggesting that the audience was more ready for challenging content than the sponsors had assumed. The appearance also transformed Ali's public image in subtle but important ways. For many Americans, it was their first opportunity to hear him speak at length about his beliefs without the filter of hostile sports commentators or political opponents. Some viewers who had seen him as simply a loud-mouthed boxer began to understand that he was a man of genuine conviction who was willing to sacrifice everything for his principles. Perhaps most significantly, the interview helped establish a template for how television could address controversial subjects. Instead of avoiding difficult topics or presenting only one perspective, Sammy had shown that it was possible to have a serious, respectful conversation about divisive issues. The long-term impact on both men's careers was complex. Sammy's television show was cancelled after one more season, officially due to declining ratings, but many believed it was really due to the Ali controversy. However, his reputation as an entertainer, willing to take risks for important causes, was enhanced. He became more politically active in his later career, using his platform to support various social justice causes. For Ali, the appearance on Sammy's show was one of the few positive media experiences he had during his years of exile from boxing. It helped humanize him for mainstream audiences and contributed to the gradual shift in public opinion that would eventually lead to his comeback. Years later, when Ali's boxing license was restored and he returned to the ring, one of the first people he called was Sammy Davis Jr. "You gave me my voice back when nobody else would," Ali told him. "You proved that sometimes doing the right thing is more important than doing the safe thing." Sammy's response was typical of his humility. "I just gave you a microphone, champ. You're the one who had something important to say." The story of Sammy Davis Jr. Sen decision to invite Muhammad Ali onto his television show reminds us that courage isn't just about physical bravery or standing up to obvious villains. Sometimes courage means risking everything you've worked for to give someone else a chance to be heard. It means using your platform not just to entertain, but to challenge, to provoke thought, to expand the boundaries of acceptable conversation. In 1968, at one of the most divisive moments in American history, Sammy Davis Jr. proved that entertainment could be more than escapism. It could be a bridge between different worlds, a place where difficult conversations could happen, a platform where unpopular but important voices could be heard. The lesson of that February night in 1968 isn't just about television or celebrity or even the Vietnam War. It's about the responsibility that comes with having a platform and the courage required to use that platform for something larger than yourself. If this story of courage and principle moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of using your voice to amplify others. Have you ever had to choose between staying safe and doing what's right? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the entertainers who changed America.